So I picked up a bunch of horror movies from eBay recently. Well, horror movies and some spooky kid stuff and stuff like that on VHS. And I wanted to share my recent haul with you guys. First up, we have The Blair Witch Project. VHS. Still sealed. Never opened. How cool is that? The bottom flap is kind of loose looking, but it's not opened. It's not, it's just, I think the flap was sticky here and it's not anymore, but it's not opened by any means. Like there's no opening. So yeah, sealed copy of The Blair Witch Project. It even says right here, includes newly discovered footage. So very, very cool. Probably never going to open that. So I'm very stoked about this run. The original VHS release of Trilogy of Terror 2. VHS still sealed. How cool is that? That is awesome. Trilogy of Terror 2. Such an underrated sequel. Never really gets talked about, but it's fantastic. It is fantastic. Up next are the two kids things. This one screams childhood. My little brother used to watch this all the time in the 90s, and I did too, just by association. It was a fantastic little kids special, and it really sucks you into the environment of. It's just one of those cool. I don't know. There's so many good Halloween specials from when you're a kid, especially those of us who grew up in the 90s. And this is one of them. It's Winnie the Pooh. Boo to You Too. I think this came out a little bit after I would really care about it. I don't see a year on this, but I remember my little brother watched this thing exhaustively in the 90s. I think it came out in the mid-90s. And I found a lot of enjoyment with this thing. It was a very good kids Halloween special, even back then. So this is still sealed. Very cool. Still has free Nightmare Ned CD-ROM sampler from Disney Interactive. I have a feeling this is not an active offer anymore. But yeah, still sealed. Very cool. I showed this to Isabella the other day on YouTube, so I didn't have to open the VHS tape up, so I can stay sealed, and she loved it. So whole new generation is getting educated on these 90s Halloween specials because they were just too good. Next, we have one I watched exhaustively as a kid. I rented this thing all the time when I was a young kid. I think it came out in 87, it says on the cover. But in like the early 90s, like 90, 91, maybe even 92, I was already renting this thing. And I finally own it. Madball's Gross Jokes. Do you guys remember this tape? It is the weirdest animation style, the weirdest stuff going on. There's only 2 Madballs VHS tapes released. The first one was Escape from Orb, I think it was called. It was actually like a traditionally animated Ninja Turtle style TV show. It was 1 episode, I think. And this was volume 2, and this is nothing like volume 1. So, very stoked to finally own this. Very, very stoked. Next up, we have a sealed copy of Casper, A Spirited Beginning, which is very cool. I vividly remember this, getting this in the 90s. I think it came out in 96, 97. And it was a couple years after the 95 film. And I remember enjoying it. It was cool. I think my little brother enjoyed it more than I did, but it's still cool to have this as like a nostalgia piece nonetheless. I'm not going to open this up. I really have no interest in watching this again. Like the 95 film blows this one out of the water. At least that's what I remember. But yeah. But I do recall prominently the Oingo Boingo song No One Lives Forever being in this. And I remember the first time I watched this on VHS back in the day, I still remember saying something about, this is that song from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. So, quite funny. Next up we have, and I'm super stoked to own this because I rented this all the time as a kid as well. It's Stephen King's Night Shift collection, which features Disciples of the Crow and The Night Waiter. And as a kid, the Night Waiter segment really freaked me out. Do you guys remember this VHS tape? I feel like it's so obscure. I've asked so many people in horror circles about this, and nobody seems to remember this thing. I think Disciples of the Crow is easy to confuse with Children of the Corn because it was such a close, especially visually, aesthetic. But the Night Waiter was so spooky, man. This thing was so good. It's only 40 minutes long. It's insane. And apparently it won the 1988 College Emmy Award, so it's older than I thought it was. But yeah, very stoked to own this. There's a lot of good memories wrapped up with this thing. Okay, so if you guys remember my opera video from a couple months ago, it was like a little 2-minute Just a Thought video. In that video, I mentioned how this is not the VHS version of the film I remember from Videoland as a kid renting. I came across the version that I remember on eBay, and I was like, oh my God, that's it. I need to have it. Got it for a very good price. The VHS tape itself is in great condition. There's no white mold on anything. It's perfect. The cover even looks good. And I forgot that the version that I rented in Videoland wasn't called Opera. It was called Terror at the Opera. And this is what the cover looked like. So not too far off from, before, but this is what it was. This is what it looked like. So super stoked to have this. Super, super stoked. And this version, it looks like, came out in 91. So that makes sense and is perfectly in line with the era that I would have been seeing it in Videoland, which was like 93, 94-ish. And this says unrated version. So I guess I really was watching the fucked up version as a kid, man. That's insane. Very cool. This is one that I used to rent at the video store that was in our local Walmart in the mid-90s. There's a video store in there. Very weird video store. And they had a lot of stuff that Videoland didn't have, Blockbuster didn't have, Movie Gallery didn't have. And this movie in particular was called Junior. And I've only seen it 2 or 3 times. Well, maybe more, maybe 4 or 5 times. But very strange movie. I remember enjoying it a lot. I put this on the level of that movie Slaughterhouse, which I also dig. I love that movie too. But yeah, this movie was fantastic. I just vividly remember the ending being super abrupt. I think it ended with him saying, "Why did you kill my mama?" And like they're on the houseboat and they're talking about how they can't just leave him like this or something, and they sail off into the sunset. I think that's how the movie ended. I haven't seen it in decades, so correct me if I'm wrong, but super stoked to own this again. I know it was originally released as a cut above. I think it's Canadian, but yeah, this is what I remember. And this is so epic because it's not sealed like a lot of the other ones I bought. It's definitely used, but the inside, it smells like a used VHS tape. Like it was sitting in the home of some kind of chain smoker for the last 2.5 decades. I mean, it's like, it doesn't smell bad, but you can tell it's been through it, man. Like I love that shit. It has the aesthetic, like you're smelling the 80s and 90s on the VHS tape. As weird as that sounds, it makes sense to me. It probably makes sense to you guys too. So that's my haul. Super stoked about it. And yeah, thanks for watching.